So let's just start out with how old were you when you started basketball? Was it the only sport that you started at that time? Has it always been basketball?
Yeah, so I started playing actually not till junior high. So I played a little bit of everything growing up. I'm from Canada and like ice hockey is obviously like a big thing. So I played ringette and not a lot of people know about ringette, but it's an all women's sport and I absolutely loved it and played it all the way up until high school. And then I was like 6'3" plus on skates. And my parents were like, okay, like that's great. But at that point I kind of turned towards more like court sports, volleyball and basketball. So I played volleyball and basketball, all throughout high school, but just always loved basketball more. Everyone in my family played it, and yeah, I just enjoyed it the most.
So when you were kind of in junior high and high school, were you thinking of playing in college? Was that in the conversation, or was it just kind of like, this is recreational for me? I'm tall and it's gonna work.
So when I started in junior high, I was very bad. But growing up, I always used to watch like NCAA March Madness with my dad. So that was always just kind of like a far off goal I had in my head. And it was once I got to high school that I realized that, I could have the potential to do that. And then at the beginning of high school is also when I was like, oh, like maybe not even just playing collegiately, I could play professionally. So that's kind of when my desire for that started. And I've just kind of been running with it.
So you're from Canada. How did the Pac-12 recruiting work out of the country?
Yeah, so honestly, now in 2022, there are tons of coaches that are recruiting in Canada. But back when I was in high school was like 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. So there weren't as many coaches that were up recruiting in Canada. But the way that the Utah coaches saw me was at a Team Canada identification camp. So it was like an age group camp for like a 17 under team. So that's where they saw me. They came and watched those practices. So I think I was like maybe in the 10th 11th grade when they saw me and kind of worked that way. And sometimes like our club teams in Canada would go down and play in AAU tournaments in the States. So that afforded us the opportunity to be seen by a lot of college coaches. But now I know so many Canadians that are playing on like schools in NCAA, which is great.
How does the speed of the game or the technical side of the game differ from Canada to the United States?
I think the game just has so many more resources behind it in the NCAA, and that's kind of like the biggest platform and stage you can play on. So that's usually a dream for a lot of Canadian players is to be able to go to the States and have that D1, experience. But I mean, there's great basketball in Canada too. It's just not as funded or marketed. So it's hard when you don't have a full staff. Like coaches in Canada have, the head coach and maybe one or two assistants. Whereas myself in NCAA, we had, head coach, three assistants, a trainer that's always traveling with us, like a video coordinator. There's just so many people on staff to help you to be successful. And there's just not as many resources in Canada. And I think that can translate onto the court a little bit as well.
How did that change the way you were perceived coming from somewhere that didn't necessarily have less of a quality of basketball, just less resources to get your name out when you were good?
Yeah, I didn't really I guess pay a lot of attention to it in high school. I mean, I knew I wanted, to go play D1. I didn't have a big signing day. I didn't have, any of those types of things that you see kids now doing, which is fine with me. And I feel like I've always kind of adopted that underdog mentality. So it was fine in college if players didn't respect me, because then I could just show it on the court and score and try to help my team win and play to the best of my abilities and just kind of, let your game speak for itself. That's kind of always been my mentality.
And it really did speak for itself at Utah. I was looking through your
Yeah,
stats and you had quite a career.
thank you.
How,
It's like
I mean,
so
like,
far away now, but
I was just kind of going back through the stat book of your time at as a youth, and it was just insane. I mean, could you have predicted that when you started basketball?
no, not at all. And even now, like when people bring it up or I, have read about it or, as I was graduating, it didn't really feel like I was doing anything crazy while I was in it. I was just, trying to grab rebounds, score, block shots, play to the best of my abilities. And I guess everything just kind of added up. And when you just keep with it, keep chopping wood and keep working hard, like good things will happen, and it paid off.
And then once you started getting to junior, senior year, what was the conversation surrounding the WNBA?
Yeah, it always been my goal to, when I started university, I really wanted to be drafted into WNBA. And after my senior year, I didn't have a great statistical senior year. So I knew the chances of me being drafted were not likely, but I still thought that I deserved and could have like a good shot at getting into a training camp. So after my senior year ended, I went through the process of getting an agent and all of that. And they, did that work on my behalf to get me a training camp deal with the Seattle Storm, which was great.
And then can you kind of talk me through the differences of signing a free agent contract versus being drafted?
Yeah, so there's 3 rounds of 12 people being drafted in the WNBA, and unfortunately, there's just not enough roster spots. So even if you are drafted, you can be cut by a team as well. Usually, the first round is pretty guaranteed. You don't see a lot of first rounders getting cut from their team, so they're usually pretty secure in what they're getting as a player. But for me, getting a training camp contract, it's basically day by day. I'm getting everything taken care of while I'm there, but it's throughout training camp that they're going to approach you about staying longer after training camp's done into the regular season, or you're going to be sent home.
And then when did they have that conversation with you?
Yeah, so I was there for about a week, and it was amazing, but I could see that as camp went on, thought I started off really great, and then it kind of went downhill a little bit. And they told me, go overseas, go to Europe, get some good experience, play against stronger, faster people, because you can be the best player in your college team or a good senior player, and then you go professional, and it's again like you're the small fish in a big pond. There's so many people at so many ages now. It's not just like 18 to 22 in college, it's 18 to 40-year-olds playing. So there's a lot of competition, and playing in Europe definitely I think has helped my game even more.
So you went from the Seattle Storm over to Poland,
Yes.
correct? And played your rookie year there.
Yeah.
And then the knee injury.
Yeah.
How did that happen? It required surgery. What part of your knee was it, and how long were you sidelined?
Yeah, so it was definitely a weird situation. Usually my bad knee was my right knee, which I had ACL surgery and like a scope on that in college. But just over time, the overuse, I guess the compensation on my left knee when I was in Poland, it just kind of like gave out on me, and the cartilage underneath my kneecap broke. So it was super painful, and it was something that I didn't want to, leave, and I didn't want to play through pain because it's not a fun experience. So I decided to go home in November. So I was only there for a couple months, sadly, played like a couple games. I was loving like being professional, getting paid to play basketball was great. But I thought it'd be better to rehab like around my family and be in a good environment that way. And I just took my time the next couple months coming back from that to just kind of change the way that I played and that I moved my body. I think after I had my first knee surgery, I was just so excited to get back on the court after a full season off. I didn't care about the pain. I just wanted to go, go, go. So I really took my time. This was like fall of 2018, spring of 2019. And I didn't have anywhere to play yet. I wouldn't be going overseas until the following fall. So I just tried to build myself back up to play as pain-free as possible. And I'm very happy that I did that, because I think it's like going to help me a lot with like the longevity of my career, thinking down the line. But at the time, I was terrified. I was like, you can't get cartilage back. So I was like freaking out, and I thought, am I ever going to be able to play pain-free and get back to the level that I was at? But it was a slow process, but I'm very thankful that I took it slow and went that route.
So can you kind of work me through the mindset that you had to adopt in order to convince yourself that playing pain-free was an option at some point in the future?
Yeah, I love basketball, and that's why I play it, right? I find joy in it even now. Like if I didn't love it, that would be the reason I would quit, or my body's telling me no. But when you're playing through pain, it becomes less enjoyable day after day as it continues to kind of wear on you, and like mentally it just starts to kind of eat at you. And I don't want to be in practice dreading it because I know it's going to hurt. I don't want to play games if I have to pop a handful of pills. So thinking about that, made it easy for me to be like, okay, I need to take a step back and kind of like focus on me, because I still want to have a lot of years left. So it was very tedious and slow, like throughout the rehab process. But it's kind of like, yeah, just laying bricks every single day, just very slowly building back up.
And then you were in Canada doing that. How did the healthcare play a role versus had you stayed in Poland?
Yeah, I mean, it was great because I came home and Team Canada was able to connect me with a surgeon to get me in right away. So in Canada, we have free healthcare. I'm so thankful for that. The surgery would be free, but sometimes it can be, a bit of a wait to try to get that surgery. So I was able to, be connected with a great surgeon in my home city and be able to have that within, a couple weeks of returning home. So that definitely like sped up the process and made it a lot less stressful.
And then once you had done the rehab process, then you went to the Czech Republic. How
Yes.
did you how did that connection get fostered? I mean, was it someone that you had played under in Poland? Was it someone from Canada? Who connected you?
Yeah, so my agent was the one that, got me that job, and it's kind of tricky after sitting, a whole year out, but I'm thankful that that club took a chance on me just by looking at like my college highlights and the player that I was. So it was definitely scary, going back in after almost 6 months not playing at that like high level. Um, and I didn't know, going hard every day how my body would react. I tried to prepare myself as best as I can, but nothing gets you prepared for playing basketball except for playing basketball. But yeah, I'm very thankful that I was able to sign with that team. And my agent, you know, made it happen, and that the team was willing to take a chance on someone that was just injured the previous year.
And then your return to play, I mean, did you have any trepidation about going 100% once you had a team that believed in you, but you may not have felt like you could?
Yeah, sometimes my confidence maybe dipped a little bit, but for me on the court, I try to just not think of anything like health wise. I want to enjoy my time on the court because, I've had injuries. I know that the game can be taken away like literally in like a half a second just from a freak injury, a non contact injury. It happens all the time. So when I'm on the court, I don't want to be thinking about the what ifs. I just want to have fun and enjoy it basically.
And then what was the process of moving overseas like? And you can start in Poland and then go to the Czech Republic and then we'll end with Greece. I mean, what was the biggest difference between your life in Canada and your life in the US and then your life in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an adjustment, like living in North America. I've lived in Canada and the US, but Europe is just completely different. The language barrier is definitely probably the biggest thing that people struggle with, because it depends where you are if people are speaking good English or not. Poland was probably the place I lived where people spoke the least amount of English, and then Czech Republic, and I found here in Greece that they speak the most. But I'm in a big city, so that helps. So it definitely depends on the location, and a lot of times rookies or just professional players in Europe in general, you're going in really blind. You don't get to take an official visit like you do in college. You're, talking to the coach on the phone. Maybe you can try to connect yourself with some of the players from the team, but you don't always have a clear picture of what you're walking into, which can be really scary. It can be a good thing. It can exceed your expectations. And it can also be, maybe not what you're expecting when you get there to the team. But then again, you've already signed a contract. People do move around from team to team throughout the years, or halfway point through the seasons, but it is really what you make it. So if you're going to sit in your room on Netflix by yourself and not interact with your teammates, not explore the city, if that's your personality and that's what's going to work for you, then I mean, you'll have a decent time, I guess, playing basketball, but it's such a unique job and situation that I know is not going to last forever. I'm not going to be playing professional basketball forever. So if you take advantage and, take day trips, travel, really interact with your teammates, go out with them, see how they live like a local, and you can also do the touristy stuff is super fun as well. But yeah, that's what everyone that I knew that played overseas, like former coaches and some other teammates told me, like it really is like what you make it when you're overseas.
What was the difference in playing basketball with 18 to 21 year olds and now you're really exceeding the age limit with your teammates? I mean, how old were they? Was it a large age gap, or were they kind of your age, especially in Poland because that was your rookie season?
Yeah, it's usually pretty spread out on most professional teams. So you'll have some younger girls, usually a couple that are under 18 that more just are kind of like practicing with the team. And then you'll have some younger ones, like young 20s. So there'll be people around your age when you're a rookie. And then every team I've been on has had, some women that are in their 30s, women with children and families. So it's usually like spread out pretty well. Sometimes you'll get on a team that's like a little bit younger with younger players, but for the most time, it's really a wide range. Um, and I honestly forget about it. Like when I'm in practice and one of my teammates here is 37, another one is 16. Like I can, have fun and joke and talk to both of them. And I don't really even like realize that, there is like 20 years between all of us.
So you don't really feel that age gap at all?
No, I really don't. We all find a way to just come together, right? We're there for a common goal, which is to win basketball games. And I've been really lucky to have some great teammates that have been like really welcoming. Um, and yeah, like if we have dinner outside of practice or team Christmas parties, like it's always a fun time. And yeah, I'm thankful that basketball can bring people together from so many different, places in the world and the different like backgrounds and walks of life.
And how does your participation on Team Canada play into that timeline?
Yeah, so I've been playing on and off with the national team basically since I was in the 10th grade when Utah first saw me. So it works, played on the U17 team, U19 team, and that was kind of scattered out high school, college, and I've done, some training and some exhibition games with like the development team, which was a lot of like college age players. And I've done some training and exhibition games with the senior team as well. So the last time I was on the team was 2019 when we went to Peru for the Pan American Games. And then we had a training camp this past November. And yeah, there's a huge pool of amazing athletes. And I'm currently waiting to see if I'm going to make the team for the World Cup coming up in February. So
When will you know if you made it?
honestly, in the next couple weeks,
Oh
I
my
will
gosh,
know.
that's so exciting.
Yeah, so it's exciting to be considered for that. And Canada just got a new head coach, so I'm excited to see where the program will go in the next couple of years.
How many people were you competing against, and how many roster spots are there for that World Cup appearance?
Yeah, so there's always like 12 people that are chosen for every Team Canada team. With COVID, it's a little crazy and up in the air if there's going to be more players that are selected in case somebody tests positive. So I'm not sure the exact amount. I'm just going to go with 12. And honestly, the pool of players is really big. Right now, they can't choose any college players, obviously, because they're playing in the NCAA. So the pool is going to be all professional players that are playing in Europe. So we had a training camp in November with everybody that could attend, but there's definitely a long list of athletes, probably let's say like maybe like 25 people that they could choose from. So the new head coach is, going through his process of selecting the players that he wants.
That's so exciting. I'll have to touch base with you in a couple weeks and see.
Yeah, we'll find
fingers,
out. I'm just
fingers
like,
crossed, though.
I know I'm just like waiting by my phone for any type of news.
Yeah. What was the cultural assimilation like into not only Poland, where the language barrier was so severe, but also just culturally different overseas?
Yeah, it definitely is different. The one thing I found, and I do love living in Europe, but sometimes they can be a little bit behind the times in some things. Just with like culturally how they view women, maybe like a little bit sexist and like more racism you're gonna see in places in Europe because there's places I lived in Poland and the Czech Republic. There's not a lot of diversity. There's not a lot of like multiculturalism. If you get to the bigger cities, you will see more of that. Um, but yeah, I just definitely feel like they're a little bit behind the times on some of the things. So as somebody that's coming from North America, I can use my voice and educate them on things that are different in Canada, whether it be social norms or just yeah things that I don't agree with, and I have no problem speaking up about those kinds of things.
And then more superficially, what was the English like with your teammates? I mean, were there a lot of other English speakers that could help, or were you kind of trying to figure it out by yourself?
It's really been different on every team. This team I'm on now, thankfully they speak the best English. Happy about that. But in Poland, yeah, there was some girls that really didn't speak English at all, and it's hard when you're on the court and you want to make little adjustments, let's say like after a foul is called or during a free throw, and you want to communicate with your teammate. Like, what am I supposed to do charades? Like, it can be hard in that sense. But I've always had coaches that speak good English, which is definitely key. And sometimes coaches will just start like going on a rant, and they'll talk in their native language. So I'll always have one girl that I'm close with on the team that I know can like translate for me and be like, what is he saying? And then let me know what's going on. But yeah, it's been different in every place, but I always make it work. It can be hard to really get to know someone though, and like their personality and their humor when English is not their first language.
Was that difficult to form bonds between teammates because of that? I mean, was that a real severe issue?
Yeah, I definitely think it can be an issue, but I feel like as I've gotten older and just like more outgoing, it's easier for me now to kind of like work around it or make it work. When I was a rookie, I just kind of didn't really know what was going on, what to expect, and I was a little bit more shy. But now I'm like, right, like it is what you make it. I'm like, I'm here. I'm gonna be here for the rest of the year. Like, might as well put yourself out there, try to make those connections, even if it's a little bit hard with a language barrier, but I don't care if people have improper grammar, right? English is not their first language. They're not going to say everything perfectly. If they have an accent, I'm like, I don't care. I'm just happy you're speaking English to me.
What was the biggest difference that you were unprepared for playing professional basketball overseas specifically?
Mm.
It may have been a positive or a negative.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know if it's a negative, but um, it's just on you. In my experience in college, you had so much support around me. It's kind of impossible to fail. You have lots of people lifting you up, whether it be academic advisors, coaches, mentors, physiotherapists. But overseas, like it's all on you. It's on you to take care of yourself, take care of your body, make sure you're like doing everything you need to do to perform. Nobody's going to chase you down as a pro. You can go out and do whatever you want as long as you show up to practice and do your job. So there's a lot of free time, but you need to use that free time wisely and make sure you're seeing the trainer if you need to go see the trainer. Like, they're not going to chase you down and be like, oh, how are you feeling? Like, it's all falls on you now when it's your job.
Talk to me about what happened with your mind in the Czech Republic. I mean, what
Yeah.
you went through some mental health issues. Why was there a certain trigger, and why did it hit you right then?
Yeah, so last season, I mean, my first season in the Czech Republic got cut short because of COVID, which obviously sucked. And then I decided to come back. I felt like we had unfinished business. And then it was like everything got 20 times worse. We, had a stoppage of play for a month. We weren't allowed to practice in our gym. We were outside running in a forest every day to work out. We could not get in the gym. Everything was locked. Everything was closed. Then everyone on our team got COVID. And it just felt like it was one thing after another. And I just could not see the light at the end. And I really was like, because we didn't know how long this was going to go on for. We didn't know when the government was going to decide to let, professional athletes play. At that point, everything was closed. And, the league and all the people a part of it were pushing really hard to try to, say that this is our job. We want to be back playing. We don't need fans. We don't need any of those things, but please let us back into the gym to even just practice. Like everything was locked. We couldn't even get in. So we tried to find outdoor courts, and yeah, it was crazy. So that went on for a month. And at that time I was like this close to going home. I just was like, I did what I can. I don't want to be here anymore. And it was like that week, they're like, all right, gym's back open. We can start practicing again. And I mean, that I guess helped to some extent. But I don't know if it was just maybe like the mental fatigue of the entire pandemic. I just was not enjoying myself and really having fun. And at that time too, I didn't really get along super well with my head coach. We just didn't see eye to eye on certain basketball things, which is to be expected. It is what it is. And I felt my confidence just dropping in every game, where it was like I was scared to make a mistake. And therefore that made me make more mistakes. So my minutes were dropping. We were back playing, but I was playing poorly, and I was playing less and less every game, and just really getting in my own head. So I made the decision to stay in the Czech Republic, but I don't think there was a right or wrong decision. It's just kind of what I decided to do, because I think going home, it wouldn't have been like I was quitting or anything like that. And it's not like I pushed through and persevered because I stayed. I don't really like, I guess, how that sounds. But I just, tried to get through it. I talked with my doctor back home, with a sports psychologist, and tried to figure out, what would help me change levels of medication, take more time for self-care, and try to do something every single day that brought me joy. That was kind of what I hung on to.
So I saw that during that time you had a self-care coloring book that you put
Yes.
together. That's really cool. Is there a link that I can put in the show notes if anyone wants to go purchase that?
Definitely I need to add a new link. Currently, I haven't been selling them, but
Oh,
hopefully
okay.
this summer they're going to make a comeback.
Oh,
Um,
hey.
but yeah, I started that actually my first year in the Czech Republic, because I had a lot of downtime, and that was something that helped me take my mind off things. If my mind was, wandering, I was starting to overthink, I would just focus on coloring, focus on drawing within the lines. So I did that my rookie year, and then I was able to then sell it, and raise money for a mental health scholarship. So I thought that was really cool. And I still have the coloring book. I used it last year, and I got one of my teammates to get into coloring as well. And yeah, I still have it. I've colored a couple pictures over here in Greece too. And it's just something for me that's relaxing.
That's really cool. And you mentioned sports psych resources in Canada specifically. How did the mental health conversation and overall dialogue change depending on where in the world you were?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I have been very lucky to be in a sports setting where we did have sports psychologists, whether that be, in Canada or in the US. And I've been seeing, a mental kind of performance coach since I was in the 10th grade. Um, Now it's kind of shifted to more maybe mental health side of things as opposed to the performance side of things, because I feel like I finally got that figured out. But overseas in Europe, I definitely have felt some of the stigma surrounding mental health. I've had doctors, ask me, you go to a new team, you need to do a physical, they need to ask you what type of medication you're on, and they don't really understand, the medication side of mental health. And I'm not going to be, ashamed of what I take and what I need that makes me at my best. But yeah, there's definitely people are more hush hush, I guess, about it. In Europe, like I said, they're kind of behind the times on some things. So I'm very open and vocal about mental health, and I've talked about it with some of my teammates. So just try to, do everything I can to normalize it because it's normal.
Of course. How have you ever talked to your teammates about their mental health struggles as well? Is that something that you use as kind of like a catalyst for change, or do you kind of keep that stuff to yourself culturally?
Yeah, I have had, some teammates like open up to me about things and be able to have those type of conversations. And that's usually who, I'm close with on the team. And I'll always listen to, to other people's stories and things that they've gone through, because it makes people feel less alone. Like we're all in it together and we all have our own struggles. And it's different for everybody, but people think that other people aren't going through the same things as them, don't have the same thoughts as them. But really, there's so many more people that do if you just, kind of reach out and ask. And I think you'd be surprised to find out how many people also have, doubts about themselves and negative thoughts. Not that that's a good thing, but there's strength in numbers and sharing your story and having somebody to lean on.
And that's why I think it's interesting that I found you through the athlete mental health hashtag on Instagram, because I mean, I love when people share their stories. That's what this podcast is for. And so when I saw you on that hashtag, I was like, I have to message her, because I just think that anyone who's willing and able to tell their story should have a place to.
Yeah,
Like, is
100%.
is that something that your coaches have been agreeable on, or do you ever feel like they are behind the times as well?
I don't know if they're that's a good question. I don't know. I don't think they're behind the times, but I just think sometimes it doesn't come to their mind. It's not something that they think about. Um, and I know, coaches are not, mental health professionals. They don't always know these types of things, but there's definitely, I think, more that they could do to educate themselves on um, on mental health. I think every coach should have, that type of training. You don't need to be able to diagnose your team, like your team or your players, but you should be able to recognize, something in someone else and maybe direct them to help if they need it, and recognize that your words are important as well. I play basketball because I love it, but I also don't want to go to practice and get screamed at for 2 hours, and some people, everyone takes criticism um, and encouragement very differently. And as a coach, you need to learn what works and what doesn't with your players. It goes both ways, like the players need to work on the mental performance side of things and not getting inside their heads, but coaches need to realize that they can have a big impact on their athletes.
And going off of that, how do you I was reading a caption of yours on Instagram, and it was really just detailing how you find the balance between order and chaos, not only on the court, but also off of it, playing overseas and being overseas.
It's always it's always a teeter-totter, basically, I guess. Yeah, I think I've learned in the past couple years to more kind of let it flow through me instead of fighting so hard against it. Fighting so hard against, negative thoughts, or fighting so hard against anxiety and stress before games. It's okay to feel those feelings, which I think some people think like, no, I can't be like this. I can't think these things. Like, it's horrible. I have to get it out of my brain. But it's okay. And I've realized that if you tell yourself it's okay, let these things pass, try to accept it, and then shift your focus. It's a lot easier to get out of that chaos a lot quicker than continuously pulling against it and fighting it.
How did the mental health struggles that you had during COVID shape that viewpoint for you?
Yeah, I think during COVID, I realized also that you need to take care of yourself before things get bad, right? So I'm able to let things pass and accept them a little bit more, but you also don't always need to let yourself get to that low point, and let things kind of stack on top of each other. We think of self-care as something you do when you're stressed out and you need to relax, but it should be maybe not a daily thing if you don't have time, like a weekly thing, sometime that you take time for yourself. And before, I really thought of mental health as only when you're struggling, what am I doing to get myself better? And now I think of, those practices of self-care and taking care of myself as something that needs to be scheduled in, just like my workouts. So before the pandemic, it was kind of like, um, I don't know, like crisis control, just try to get, stop the overflowing and the chaos. And now it's kind of like I'm trying to stop it before it starts, which is probably a lot more proactive, better idea.
And then where do you see the conversation surrounding mental health going for athletes specifically?
Yeah, thankfully, in my in the last not even 10 years, I've seen it just like grow so much. Mental health was not something I discussed in high school, and not even really at the beginning of college either. I only started talking about it at the end of college when I had my own struggles, and my eyes were just open to this whole other like world that I didn't even know existed and wasn't paying attention to. And I'm like, well, if I didn't know and I wasn't talking about it, how many more people are out there struggling with these same things as me and feeling like they are alone? Because I felt alone. So I've seen tons of athletes speak out, which I think is amazing. Kevin Love is a huge one, athlete. There's so many more platforms now. The Hidden Opponent is one that I love for students, and mental health. And yeah, I'm really happy to see all of those things, and see the stigma and the conversation opening up. And now that we kind of have that, I'm thinking like, what's the next step? So now that we have, more people talking about it, there are a lot of people now that are working to get more accessible resources so people can get help. And I think that's the next step that needs to be taken in the next, 5 years.
And then how do you want to be the change on every team that you're on? Because it seems like you're doing a good job. But
Thank you.
going forward, how do you want to be that kind of confidant for your teammates if they were to feel those ways that you were?
Yeah, I think you have to, be able to be vulnerable. And that doesn't mean it's not scary. You just kind of got to do it anyway. And it's only, terrifying or scary or, for just a little bit. And then it's done. And then you opened up that line with other teammates. And so by sharing your story, that can help others. And it's about vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable and kind of show yourself first sometimes to get people to open up to you. So I think I can always improve on that and, try to be that person, on every team I'm on and have those little connections with everybody on the team. So I can approach anyone on the team if I see that they're down or if they see that I'm down. I always want to have kind of that open line of communication with people.
Yeah, I think that's just it should be the norm, but
Right.
it's not. And depending on what culture you're in, and even in the United States, what team you're on and what kind of support system that team has, it completely changes. When was your first experience with sports psychology? Was it at Utah, or was it after you had gotten out of college?
Yeah, we had a sports psychologist on staff at Utah, which was great. So I saw him throughout my college years. Um, and that's not something that every college even had when I was in college. Yeah.
And then on the teams that you've been on since then, do they have sports psych? Do they refer you out to someone more clinical? I mean, how does that conversation go?
Actually, my team in Poland did have a sports psychologist that would work with our team, which was very rare. I came to find out. No other team that I've been on has had, that type of resources. We have a team doctor, and that's kind of about it. But thankfully, I have like my own sports psychologist connection back home, in Canada, and that was connected through the resources, and the sports center in Manitoba, my home province, from kind of like Team Canada. So I was able to make that connection and have somebody to reach out to when I need it. But it shouldn't take me playing at that level to have that, have that resource. So yeah.
Yeah. And then where do you see the sports psychology, not only conversation, but community and outreach and resources being? I mean, when will it be good enough?
Great question. Yeah, I think hopefully there's a lot of people that want to become psychologists in the next, decade or so. And I feel like there's so many different um, jobs and like areas that could benefit from a sports psychologist, whether you're working in an office, whether you're an athlete. I think everybody could benefit from having access to those things. So it'd be great if people within their, work benefits have access to a sports psychologist or a psychologist, just like they would have dental benefits or, physiotherapy benefits. And same with an athlete. If you're signed to a team, I would love, your insurance that covers you to have somebody in place and have maybe even a connection set up so that you don't have to go out and find it. Like right now, there's just so many barriers to sometimes getting help. And if you do find the help, there's wait lists. So what can we do to try to remove those barriers so it's easier for people to get the help?
Yeah, the most recent episode of this podcast was with a Team Australia Olympian, and through her contract, she actually had 10 sessions with a sports psychologist that
Yeah,
were
that's amazing.
included.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I'd ever heard of anything actually being included in a contract like that. And
Yeah,
that
I've
was
never
just,
heard of
it wasn't strange to me as much as it was abnormal.
it. Hmm.
And I just thought, why don't more places do that? I mean, Canada has free healthcare,
Yeah.
and it's just different depending on where you go, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I would love to see that included for everybody. Um, and yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take for Europe to get to that level, but it needs to come from applied pressure from the athletes. You can negotiate many things in your contract with your agent. So if you're trying to push for that, and a lot of people are trying to push for that, then teams will see value in offering that to players, and it can begin to become a draw for people to play for that team.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, you can negotiate anything.
Hmm.
So why not negotiate pro mental health resources?
Yeah.
That would be really cool. Is there anything else that you think that I missed talking about? Anything that you wanted to include? Any links to anything that you're doing upcoming that you wanted me to put in the show notes? Any foundations that you'd like to promote?
Honestly, not that I can think of right now. I'm really not doing a lot overseas. Like usually the summertime is when I'm like, trying to fundraise, trying to do all these fun things. But right now it's kind of just like work, school, just plugging along, basically.
And then your episode will come out on February 23rd. So we have about a month.
Okay.
In the in between, if there's anything that you think of that you'd like to include, if anything has happened interesting or not interesting, um, just DM me. I can include whatever you want. If there are links to anything that you'd like me to put in the show notes,
Okay.
just
Well,
DM
by
me.
that time, the tournament will be over. So hopefully I'll be
Yay!
in Canada for that.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Message me or I'll just keep up. I'll keep up with it and fingers crossed.
Thank you. We'll see.
And then if I can just get a picture of you either playing or just a headshot of you from something to use for social media, you have a month. So it's like you don't have to do it right now, but just before the
Honestly, I'll do it
episode
right
comes
now
out.
before I forget because I always forget these things.
Okay. Yeah, I mean you can just DM it to me on Instagram. That's fine.
Okay,
But yeah, that'll be used for social media. So there will be Facebook, not Facebook, there will be Instagram, Twitter, and then this entire podcast will go out on YouTube as well. And
Okay,
then
great.
obviously podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple and SoundCloud.
Great.
So if just before we go, the floor is yours. If there's anything else that you wanted to talk about, here you go.
Um,
I'm gonna put you on the spot, but
I'm just gonna end it
if
off
there
with
isn't, there isn't.
right. I'm just gonna end it off with like it's okay not to be okay. And mental health is just as important as physical health. That's a big, slogan for me. Mental health is just as important as physical health. They both make up, half of the pie of your health. So let's normalize it.
I think that's a great way to end this. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah, thank you for inviting for this. It was awesome.
And
A lot
then
of fun.
I'll reach back out once the episode is published, and I hope you love it.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.